Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dr. Denisha Keating Show. Super excited to be here with you again today with another fantastic guest. I know one of the things about being at the kitchen table is that we have conversations about anything and everything. And one of those things is going to be about how we don't let childhood trauma define us. Now, again, just a reminder for this show, what we're doing is two friends are coming to the table together to talk about a hard topic, and we are going to ask questions to understand the other person and where they're coming from. So the rules are we cannot yell, we can't scream, we can't talk over each other, we can't interrupt, and we're here to ask questions to actually understand what is coming from the other person versus assuming. But we're going to be inviting you as the fly on the wall to understand what exactly this conversation can look like. So Tammy, I'm going to have you take it away. You are going to be talking about childhood trauma and the impact it could or could not have on our adult life. So go ahead and take it and we'll go from there.
Okay, well, welcome and thank you so much for having me, Denisha. So basically, I grew up in what they would call now a house of utter dysfunction. And growing up with two alcoholic parents and just the instability, and the insecurity, and the unpredictability, and the walking on eggshells, and all of that, really, if you let it, I tell people it changes who you are and it changes the way you look at the world. It changes your version of what feels safe and what doesn't, and how you choose your mates and it changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
But that's only if you don't know better. If you don't know that you can go out there and you can rewire all that negative stuff and you can come up with new patterns, new habits, new joys, and really live the life you want to. So it only defines you. And I say it all the time, probably at least 5 times a day. It defines you if you let it. If you don't, it does not.
So one of the things, and I'm hoping we dig into this, and so maybe we just start digging into this first, is a lot of the times when someone says, you know, it'll define you if you let it, it can come off as dismissive. When I have been in conversations, there is a difference when it's dismissive and not. The way you're saying it to me does not come across as dismissive, but how has that been received by people in conversation when you have talked to them?
It takes a little bit to really get to them because sometimes they're like, no, it's just the way it is. I grew up, attracting the wrong people. They just kind of assume that because of their past that it's what their destiny is.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people do kind of take it like I'm just like, I don't want to say better than them, but they're like, no, this is the way it is. This is the way I am. This is the way everybody told me I was going to be. And I try to explain to them, that's people told me that too. When I was being that troublemaker in high school, I remember my high school principal saying to me, Tammy, with all you've been through, you're lucky you're still standing, but you're never going to change, are you? And I remember I was only 17 and I was like, yeah, I am. I'm going to be better. I'm going to be happier. But people assume, and it's just like that stereotype or that stigma of growing up in that kind of household that you're going to follow in those patterns.
So I also grew up in a not so great family, ended up in foster care and ended up raising my siblings, and becoming the legal guardian of them when I was 24 years old. And I heard that same sentence over and over again. And even someone told me, they're like, you know what, Denisha, if you had quit and didn't go your route, I would have understood it. But when I was in it, people are like, what are you doing? You're not doing enough. You're not, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, you can't really win. So what inside of you do you feel like made you go like, no, I need this to change so that I don't do this myself? Like what was there something burning in you that you felt, or like what was that conversation you had with yourself?
Well, it was almost like when I was younger, before I was an adult, I was just determined to not be that person. When people would say to me, well, life dealt you a bad hand. You're just going to have to deal with it. I'm like, no, I don't. Like, that's not my fault. I didn't cause any of this. So I always had this belief that it wasn't my fault. But you still, growing up like that, you still have those underlying unworthiness feelings and all of that. So you really have to push. But the big thing was when I got ready to have children. I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to be like that. I refuse to carry this on another generation.
It's so wild because when you're in that, I think the self-reflection is like, at first it starts off where you're just like, no, I don't want that. I don't want that to be part of my life. And then you're just like, no, it's not going to be a part of my life, because you're right. So many people are just like, yeah, well, what do you expect? You're just going to end up in their same position. And you're just like heck, I will. But I
Right.
think it's because you see the destruction. Like when you're in it like that, you do have the visual awareness that what is happening is not normal, and what is happening is not good, and it does not have to be like that. But when we have those conflict conversations with people where they're just like, no, this is the only route we can go, we're not good, we can't switch it, it's what happened to me, and now it is what it is. It kind of, that conversation kind of frustrates me. I'm gonna be honest. Like kitchen
Oh yeah.
table talk conversation. Like I sometimes I'm just like, I'm gonna slap you. Like
Yeah.
it is not the way it's supposed to be. So what have you found to reach someone who's just like, nope, nope, nope. Like what would you say to someone who might, like, they're interested in changing the direction, but they're still stuck in like the, it's poor me, I can't change it. Like how do you start, like what do you do? Do we
You
even
know, I use a lot of
engage?
those kind of I use a lot of the cliche expressions, if you want to be honest. Like I will say
Yeah.
things like, life is a choice. Happiness is a choice. I
Mm,
mean, they say
mm,
in the Bible, choose joy.
mm,
Because if you want to be stuck, you can be stuck. So I use, like I said, I use some of those expressions like you can be a victor or you can be a victim.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
it's a choice.
It
Everything,
is.
we were given one thing and it was a name and free will. So if you decide, you have an abundance of emotions every day, you have an abundance of feelings,
Right.
pick the better ones. Make
Yeah.
the better choices. And I also tell people that, you can stay a victim, but once you are aware of what happened to you, because some people don't know, I mean, that was
Yeah.
their norm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you can't fault anybody for not being aware. But once you are aware, now it's your responsibility to make better choices.
I think that's super powerful because I don't hear a lot of people who will just say that. Like it is usually just like, yeah, well, a lot of us are aware of what has happened, and then we use it as an excuse. And I think there is something to be said that it is a fear of like, well, if I don't know if stepping out and changing it is actually going to do a doggone thing. Like, what if it doesn't? What if I spend all this time and energy and resources trying to change it, and this was just what my life was supposed to be, is chaos and not purposeful. And that kind of got to me when someone had said like, well, what if you try to go to school, and like at this point I was homeless, from 18 to 24, and they're just like, well, what, Denisha, what if you wake up 10 years from now and it's completely pointless and all of what you thought was going to change it didn't change it? And I sat back and I was like, I have to try. Like, I just have to, because what we've been doing generationally isn't working. It's just not,
Right.
And then I heard someone say, well, like one of my professors, I was talking to him about it, and he goes, you know what the definition of the insanity is? I said, no. He goes, it's doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And
Yep.
he goes, do you want to know what the definition of victimhood is? And I was like, is it the same thing? He goes, yeah. And I was like, he's like, it's doing the same thing over and over again and being like, oh, poor me, but not actually wanting to change it. So you're doing the definition of insanity. And I was just like, that was really like, it really like sat with me, because I recognized that there are going to be a lot of people who don't want to change it. But
Right.
I don't want to sit in that. And I'm going to do everything I can to get on to the other side of it. And, one of the other professors I had later on just said, like, well, let me ask you a question. Like, if you wake up in 10 years from now, are you going to be happy with your choices or upset that you didn't try something else? And I was like, thank you for that, because this is hard. And I think we look at situations and go, it'll be easy to change, and it's not. And then we go, well, it's hopeless. So when you were changing some of those things, you said that really when you were like, I'm not doing this going forward, is when you had your children.
Yes.
What were some of the things that were like an absolute, I'm not going back to that kind of things, if you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for one, I was pregnant with my first child and I realized I didn't understand unconditional love. And I think that was the biggest like slap in the head with like a 2x4. like I was like, how am I going to love this child? Like I didn't know what it felt like. You know what I'm saying? So it was,
Mm.
I really, that was, and I realized, I mean, I honestly, my ex-husband, he's my ex-husband now, but he was off in the military, off in Turkey or something, or Iraq, and I was by myself. And I was ready, if I wasn't able to love this child, to give it up for adoption or do whatever I had to do. Because I was like,
Mm.
I will not let some child feel unloved ever.
Mm.
So, and it was a lot of self-reflection, because that would have been the hardest thing I would have ever done in my entire life, but I would
Right.
have done it if I didn't think I was capable of that, because
Mm.
why would I put somebody through that?
Mm.
So I
Okay.
did the only logical thing. I went out and I bought myself an 8-week-old puppy. I was like, if I can't love a puppy, then I can't love a baby.
Oh
So,
gosh. So what happened?
well, I remember the night that I sat there and I remember holding him. He was like 8 weeks old. He was like this tiny little Shih Tzu, and I'm holding him in my hand. And literally, I was 26 years old, and it was the first time my heart had ever really felt love, like
Mm.
unconditional, like that adoration that you have, that your kids look up at you with when they're born. That's what I felt for this puppy. And then I was like, okay, I'm good. I got this. Like that was
Mm.
my turning point. And
Okay. Let's dig into that though, because someone's gonna go, but Denisha and Tammy, a dog is different than a baby. Obviously, this was your turning point. So can you tell me what that turning point looked like more in depth?
okay, so it was holding that puppy in my hands, and literally,
Mm.
the feeling of your heart melting.
Yeah, yeah.
I had never felt that. And
Mm. Mm.
so I knew, I mean, literally, it was instantaneous. It was immediate. I can remember the little puppy looking up at me and me just wanting to protect it and love it and not let anything happen to it ever. And
Mm.
that's where I was like, so this is what it feels like. This is what it
Okay.
feels like to be. And I kind of equated that with, that was my first child. I mean, it was a
Mm.
puppy, but I had never changed a diaper. I had never done any of those things except for my little sisters, but that's neither here nor there. But I had never done any of those things. I had never felt that, like that bond like that. So then I started really diving into, okay, what else am I missing? Like what
Mm.
other big life concepts am I really missing? And there was a lot of them. I remember
Yeah.
being married the first time and people saying, it's not okay that people talk to you that way. I was like, what do you mean?
Mm.
They were like, your husband is so condescending and so mean and so, just mean. And I'm like,
Mm.
I didn't think anything of it. People had talked to me that way my whole life. I didn't know I could
Yeah.
stand up for myself.
Yeah, and I think there's something ignited in you to say like I can do hard things. I can
Hmm.
raise a puppy. I could be a good mom to children, but also the piece of I shouldn't be talked to like that. Now, did you connect the dots of like, oh, how I grew up was how I was being treated in other relationships?
Not until I went to therapy. So I
Mm.
did spend some time in therapy, and then I just started throwing kind of every modality I could at the wall, because I was like, okay, this is talk therapy was nice, but I'm like, I just felt like there was more. Like,
Mm.
it's nice to come in and tell you what I'm feeling during the day about something, but literally when I started, I had zero feelings. And some of you out there might be familiar with that feeling of literally being a shell
Right.
of a person. I
Yeah.
didn't have I didn't have emotions at all, because I
Mm.
literally had spent my whole life kind of standing outside my body watching things happen to me and just going, "Oh man, that sucks." But there was no pain attached. There was no emotion attached, because I that was all gone.
Was there, and again, if you don't want to answer this, you can actually absolutely be like, skip. When, because you said you were watching, like almost like detached from the situation, so you had no emotions toward it. Was there a moment that it just kind of, can you describe that a little bit for me of like what was that like when you started to recognize like, oh, that was very painful?
Well, I remember the time that my therapist said to me, well, I told her about something that had happened, and it was a fight I'd gotten into with somebody at work or something. And they're like, wow, you
Mm.
should have been really upset. Like, how does that make you feel? And that's when I was like, I don't feel. And I remember she told me,
Mm.
you have got to start feeling something. So if you, and she was, again, she didn't tell me, feel it. Where do you feel it in your body? Like I know to do now. She was like, if you get angry or mad or sad, write it down, write that down, and then sit with that and think about
Mm.
what that even is. I really didn't, it all blended together. So the first time, like I remember going, oh wow, that does make me mad. Like, and then I was like, well, what do I do with this? Like, I didn't even know what
Yeah.
to do with it.
For so I know a couple people who are going to listen to this and be like, "Oh my god, they're calling me out," and not intentionally, but I also experienced that same detachment from feelings. Like I couldn't cry. Like it didn't matter what people said to me or did to me physically, emotionally, or financially. Like I just would not cry. But then I think the last time I cried was probably like 13 or 14, and then I didn't cry from 14 to like 19. Um, and then when I cried, it was just like I only ever cried when I was really angry and not getting the opportunity to speak. So I still I don't have, now that I'm older, I have a little bit more emotion where I'm like, oh, but that I still don't show that. So how did you even identify that you were angry coming from so long of not even having emotions?
Oh gosh, I'm trying to think back to when I really started. I don't know. Like I would journal and I would just write like what it was feeling like. Like, oh my gosh, I want to just punch someone, and I would just literally, like, I can remember
Yeah.
writing in my journal, like, I had this conversation with my teacher today and he told me I was dumb and like I just wanted to punch him, like, and I can remember then like putting
Yeah.
like dumb, like no, I'm not dumb, and I really had to, a lot of that I worked through with my therapist because I wouldn't have come up with
Yeah.
those answers
And it's
on
being
myself,
like
honestly.
just kind of being honest with where you were at. So I could see it as like I'm not mad, but then you're writing down like I just wanted to punch him, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm actually mad about that. I've done that where I'm like I'm not mad. I'm just think it's funny when I'm like, oh, I'm actually
Right.
I'm actually kind of mad about this. And then I can see that, like, processing that slowly, because I think maybe just from your own experience, what was that like? Did you ever feel a time where you're just like, no, I don't want to feel that, like I do not want to dig into that because that's going to be too much?
Yes, well, I had to take it slow. I had to take it real
Okay.
slow, especially with, I had old school therapists, and I had, the first time I went to a hypnotherapist, they wanted me to go back and let's go back and relive. And I was like, oh, no, 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 no. So
That
like it
doesn't
was
have to
way
be part of it,
aggressive.
right? Can you
Yeah.
clarify?
And
Okay.
yes. And we're not reliving anything. And so it took
Yeah.
me a couple, really getting to, when I started doing inner child work, that is when I finally worked with someone who explained to me that you could go back and kind of observe a situation without reliving the situation
Which is so
and
hard to
giving it
do.
an,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that was really a big turning point because there were times where you shut down. I mean, and even
Hmm.
you're just like, no, that's too much. And they would say, well, we're going to have to deal with this. Well, yes and no. Like we're going to have to deal with it, but let's just accept it happened. And then let's work on ways to reframe it or, recategorize it, whatever you need to do. But I'm not going back. You're not going to hypnotize me and let me relive this horrible thing that I've blocked out of my memory. That makes zero sense to me.
It's still, yeah. I got into a fight with a therapist that I met once that I didn't, not intentional, but literally like met her, was like, okay, I'm looking for a therapist. And within 20, like she was late by 20 minutes. And then 5 minutes of me saying, okay, this is what I'm experiencing today. This is what I would like to work through. She's like, oh, you have PTSD, CTSD, this, and like name like 10 different things. And she's just like, I can cure that with hypnotherapy. And I was like, I'd rather not do hypnotherapy because there's some family history there. And she's just like, well, then you're never going to find healing. And I said, I'm going to go ahead and end the call now. And then she,
Yeah.
like, I texted, like, I was supposed to have one more meeting with her, and she was late again. And I was like, okay, this is not working. Like, this is putting me more in a state of anxiety because I have to get back to work. And like, I am panicking because I'm like, I have my lunch break that I'm doing this on. And, I ended up being like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and cancel the following week because I have a meeting. And she's like, if you're not serious about your mental health, you need to release me as your therapist so I can pick up another client. And I was just
You're
like,
released.
and you're released. I was like, I literally had a work meeting and you've been late both times that I had you. But it made me kind of sit back and recognize, and I think this is to what you're saying is like time is necessary, and finding people who will walk you through the way you need and want to be walked through.
Yes.
Walk through. I don't know. My dyslexia is jumping right now and is like, I don't know. Okay. But so you said it took time. How long are we talking?
I mean, it's been since I started there. I'm 56. So it's been 30 years that I've been just learning and working
Mm,
and journaling and doing all that stuff kind of behind the scenes where nobody
yeah.
even knows. But there's still like now I can, like, I'm 100% better than I was. But
Yeah.
you're always going to have, like you said, that when you get so mad, I actually work with someone and I said, he's the only person in my world that can make me so angry. If I open my mouth, I'm going to either get fired or cry. Those are my only two
Mm.
options. And I've gotten to a point now where if I have something to say, I say it. But like this one man, like I'm like, ugh, so sometimes I'll come home from work and I just write my story. I write a little letter to him in my journal. You know what you can do with this? But
Okay. Have you ever watched the Rugrats, or not Rugrats, the Little Rascals?
mm-hmm,
It's the dear Darla.
mm-hmm.
And I hate your freaking guts. Like sometimes you just need to get it out. So what can you walk me through? What is the purpose of the writing it on paper?
I think when you put it on paper, you bring it to life because you can
Mm,
go back. Sometimes you're so in, and I tell people when I write in my journal, it's word vomiting. I'm not thinking about it.
yes.
As a matter of fact, when I did the inner child work, I got in that habit. They'd say to write with your non-dominant hand, to write
God.
back. And I actually had someone the other day tell me to try that they journal with their eyes closed. And I thought, wow, that's really intense. But I tried it. I could barely read it. But
But you
I
thought
just
it
think
and
when
put
you,
it down. Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, I mean, when you put it on paper, it's something like it gets it out of you. It's gone.
Yes.
I waited on a lady that was 102 years old one time, and I said, "How did you live to be
Mm.
102 years old?" And she basically was explaining to me that every night she had a glass of red wine, and as she drank her red wine, she envisioned all of this positive energy coming into her crown, and then she went to the bathroom and
Mm.
she peed out all the negative stuff. And then she said, and if there was anything left over, I told it to my diary when I went to sleep.
Okay, so
And I
we're
thought,
not promoting alcoholism.
no, no, no.
But I understand. So she had a process where it's like, okay, I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna you can do this with water, you can do this with
Yeah.
tea, but what she was doing was she was saying, I'm gonna take a moment and sit and let it
Mm-hmm.
process. Then I'm gonna go
Yep.
to the bathroom and release whatever. I'm just to give myself a visual. I'm gonna
Yeah. So
release
it,
it. And then whatever's left, like still, if I'm still fuming, still upset, I'm gonna go ahead and journal to get it out of my body. So that's what she's saying is in every aspect. I'm just
yes.
looking at like she's thinking of a visual of like, okay, some good stuff's coming in, bad stuff's coming out. Oh, there's still a little bit left. Let me journal the rest of this out. Again, not alcoholism, but I understand like it's giving her something to think through actively as she's
Mm-hmm.
taking a sip of something. That makes
As
sense.
she's, yep. So it could be anything. It could be I'm going to go outside and walk for 5 minutes and blow off some steam. I'm going to go out and I'm going to play cloud shapes and try to find the biggest dinosaur in the clouds. Whatever it
Yeah.
is, it's something to just take your mind off of what you're thinking about and
Yeah.
really. But you honestly, I'm sure you've, in all your work, you've done tons of like somatic stuff. I mean, you got to get it out somehow. So sometimes it's
Yes.
just shaking it.
Well, that like I love that you said. I mean, I'm going to say this. It's going to come off wrong. I love that you said it's been 30 years. Not that you've been in counseling the whole time, but that you've been doing the work for 30 years. So it is lifelong when we've been
Yes.
hurt in those ways. And the
Yes.
journaling piece actually has gotten me to 3 different books, blogging, putting, doing podcasts with people because it is one of those things that it's so valuable when we talk about it. But there is something so different about writing it down in our own journal, that we really, really, it's like, I love that you said unfiltered. Like, you don't filter it, you just write it down. Like, it's not strategized. It's not like, I think there's this moment that I've always struggled with sometimes when journaling, where I'm like, well, if somebody reads this, I don't want them to hear my real inner thoughts. And I'm like, and if they read this, they'll see that I'm human. So I had to keep telling myself that, like, and if they see this, they'll finally see that I'm human. And not to like against your coworker, but it was just like, get it out, because it's like, oh wow, now I can go have a real conversation, and not the conversation of a, like, I would have been at a child being like, and your face looks stupid. Like, instead I'd be
Yes.
like, hey, the way that you're talking to me is really hurtful. And it helps you process that conversation to come off and be like, okay, am I being petty in how I say what I say? Or am I ready to have a more of an adult conversation in the room? And that, I think, is what journaling has done for me so much more.
Absolutely. And even, if you're afraid someone's going to read it, or you just, whatever the case
Mm-hmm.
is, I mean, there's been letters that I've written to my mother and I've burned them. I mean,
Yeah.
physically put a light to them and watch them go down the sink. And, it's just something about, it's like telling your story. Every time you tell your story, you heal a little bit more
Yeah.
because you get some of it out of your body. Every bad thing that happened to you is that you don't deal with is put in a backpack or put in, and whatever, and thrown on your back. And then by the time you're 50, you got this 1,000 pounds on your back. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
let's start pulling this stuff out and unloading it.
What I found was that to be crazy is that it's, most of the time we think it's just like a figuratively a backpack. But what we have actually seen through research, and like there's a book called The Body Holds the Score, where
Although I
it
love that book.
talks about how it actually internalized, like, damages us sometimes. This is where the anxiety, depression, panic, diabetes issues, weight gain, heart issues, liver issues, feet, fatigue, that's been like that was my thing for like a year with my therapist. I'd come in like the first 6 months, and every day I'm just like, I'm tired. And one day she said, is it a physical exhaustion or like a spiritual exhaustion? Like, is it your soul?
Mhm.
And I just bawled, and I was like, both. It's freaking
Mhm.
both. And she's like, okay, what are you thinking right now? And I was just processing that. And after a year, like, I'd been in years ago, and then I was like, okay, it's time to go back. Like, I can't even handle normal conversations without wanting to literally physically assault somebody. I need to go I need to go process this with someone who can walk me through a little bit deeper. But, recently I went in, and I just said, I was like, I actually don't have like anything practiced. I don't have an agenda. Like, I'm just coming in to therapy and recognizing a lot of the work I've done in the last year. But I'm not coming in like, okay, we're going to talk about this and this and this because this is what's pissing me off. Like, it had nothing. It's just like, I don't even know what to talk about with you, because it's just kind of, there. But I was like, I know there's more work to be done, but it's finally it's a different kind of healing when you get there and you're like, we've worked through a lot, and it was
Right.
hard. And there were moments that I was like, I want to kick and scream. But I
Hmm.
noticed that when we say inner child, it's the little kid in me being like, I need to be heard.
Yeah.
And that sometimes is why we feel the kicking and the screaming and wanting to yell at someone. And other times, it's, yes, they're being rude to us, but
Right.
our reaction is to, like, instead of being able, like you said, to use your voice, we're just wanting to punch them, is because it's like, I know you will hear that.
Right. Right.
Versus like, hey, that's really rude, and I'm going to tell you that so you can change your behavior. So now, you were talking about a lot of, like, in the beginning you said like how, we don't want it to impact our future. So how, if we can you I know people always imagine the opposite, but can you imagine what your life would be like if you didn't do the inner work? Do you think you would be in the
Whew.
spot you are today?
No, I would have probably, oh, I don't even know. I would have probably, first of all, stayed married to my first husband because I wouldn't have cared. There's just so many things that would have been different. I would not have written my book. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today because I wouldn't have had any confidence to do any of that. And, it's funny, and I'll tell this story real quickly, but a month ago, actually, today is the 20th, right? So, 21st. But a month
Yeah,
ago,
it
I
is.
actually had a stroke, and I said, I'm sitting on the curb and I said, boy, what I got out of that whole thing was how far I've come in my journey, because there was no negative self-talk. There was
Mm.
no pity party. There was no feeling blaming or this is what you deserve. There was none
Yeah.
of that. And I
Mm.
literally came out of it like 10 times stronger than I went into it. And
Gosh.
I was
I
like,
love
that was
that.
amazing.
So there, I think you said something to the effect of like when you were just kind of growing up, you were kind of just like detached from your body, just living through it. Now you're being able to actually be actively like, do you still feel that same feeling where you're detached?
I'm just gonna, I'm a big dissociator. I think some people
Mm,
do. When I get overwhelmed or stressed, I'm the one that's scrolling on my phone and not paying attention to anything else. I shut things out.
mm,
Anytime something bad has happened to my children, it's like I'm watching it. I remember one time my son accidentally fell on a knife and put a knife through his hand. And
gosh.
I went around, there was like 9 women in my kitchen. I went around and gave everybody a job, something to do while I was sitting there rocking him. And I was literally like standing outside of myself watching it. Like I was, but
Mm,
they were like, wow, you were so in control. And I was like, I don't remember it. Like I didn't
mm,
remember it. But
gosh.
it's but like I said, when the most horrible things happen, I stepped out. But at least now it's a step out and I'm in
Yeah.
control.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm in
Yeah.
control. Like I mean, I don't want to keep going back to the stroke, but when I had the stroke, I've talked to many people since then that don't remember anything. And I
Right.
remember both conversations, the one that was in my head that I was trying to say and the one that was coming out of my mouth. So I was standing outside,
Mm.
like literally, like, okay, I got to shorten that sentence up because this is what I tried to say the guy, and I just asked him if he was a dentist. Like, it was totally jumbled from what was in my brain to what was coming out of my mouth, and I saw that.
Yeah.
Where most
Yeah.
people just remembered as confusion.
Mm, gosh, that's wild. Like that's just I'm like, wow, okay. Trauma. But it's interesting because I don't think a lot of people will talk about like a lot of the times they're just like, oh, if you don't deal with this, you're not going to have a good job, a good family, a good this, a good that. But you're like, you don't like it is so much more than that too. It's yes, it's those ways. But it is also like you just won't feel emotionally when you don't deal with it. And some people are like, well, I don't want to feel pain. It's like you're going to feel pain, but what we're missing out on too is happiness,
Yes.
joy, contentment. And that I think I have had a lot of conversations with different people who have said like it's scary that I would have to dig into that because I know what this feels like, this chaos, this dissociation. I know what that feels like. I can anticipate that,
Right.
but they can't anticipate other things. So, what would you say to someone who might tell you that? Like, they want the change, but they're just scared of it because they're just like, I don't know what to expect.
Well, it's like my father said to me one time, he said, Tammy, do you want to do amazing things? And I was like, yeah. He's like, then get out of your comfort zone. He said, nothing amazing ever
Mm,
happens in your comfort zone.
mm,
And when you grow up in that chaos, even though it's horrible, your brain is comfortable. And that's why
mm.
we don't want to change. So I tell people, what's the worst thing that can happen? It's your choice. You can, if
Right,
you're
right.
listening to these podcasts and you're watching these people hand in hand and loving and laughing out there and you're not doing that, it's your choice to go out and find that. And
Yeah.
it really is. And you can stay and you can feel, and I know everybody says that, when you grow up in chaos, you become the most empathetic person in the world. And yes, I feel people's emotions and I feel bad for them. But at the same time, I wish people had said the hard things to me. I wish
Mm.
people had been like, Tammy, get your shit together. Pardon my French. I don't know if I can
No,
swear on
you're good.
here.
You can swear.
But
It's fine.
I wish someone had been like, get your shit together, stop feeling sorry for
Yeah,
yourself,
yeah,
stop drinking, stop partying, stop doing stupid things. Like I wish someone had done that, and nobody did.
yeah. I had a
So
few
it
people
took
do
me a
that.
lot longer than the average bear.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is like not the average bear. You're actually on track for where it is because I think in our 20s people just kind of yeah it's fine like you had a hard childhood just keep going and then our 30s and 40s people are like okay now you got to deal with this it is very rare for people to call us out in our 20s because they're just like, oh, you're just being a 20-year-old. It's like, no, like
Right.
this is self-destruction and we need to call it out. So you said, I wish people had said it sooner. What would have been something to get Tammy's attention? Because I think that's always different for everybody.
Um, wow. And I don't even know what somebody else could have done. I think it was just having a family that made the difference and just
Yeah.
finally, like one day, it's like all of a sudden I start noticing, oh, wow, I stood up for myself and I didn't get beat up and I didn't get yelled at and I didn't feel like a piece of crap. Like this is
Yeah.
kind of cool, and it
You're like,
was a
hey.
gradual it was really, it
Yeah.
was more of a gradual transition. And then, but I don't know, I think even the numbness thing, I think once that started going away is when, because I mean, we numb. That's why
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
grow up like that and we do drink or we
Mm-hmm.
do gamble or we do drugs or we do have sex with people we don't know. Whatever it is, it's because we're numbing. We're trying to find something that we didn't have.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
once I realized, like really made the decision that that was me, that I was the only one that could fix that. No
Yeah.
therapist, no anything
Yeah.
could fix that. I had to decide on a daily basis I wanted a better life. Until I did that, then, and that I was worth it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, honestly, when you grow up like that, you don't believe, even though you say
Yeah.
you do. You can look in the mirror all you want and go, I'm lovable, I'm pretty, I'm beautiful, I'm smart. But then when the rubber hits the road and somebody asks you if you want to do something and you really don't want
Right.
to do it, but you don't have you get that knot in your stomach and you're like, okay, I'll do it. Then
Yeah.
you don't believe that your voice is worthy.
Right. Well, and it's interesting too because when we're filtering through, the addiction piece, we are looking for a momentary happiness that we want it to be longer, but that's why it becomes an addiction, is because it actually releases dopamine into our brain to be like, here's a happy pill, here's a happy pill, and we're like, oh, we want more of that, oh, we want more of that, oh, I really want more of that, and we think we're going to find it at the barrel of a bottle or a pill or through sex or through spending money. Like, we think we're going to find it in these areas, and like, we don't. So it is hard to look in that mirror and say, I'm not happy with what I see, but I'm still worthy of happiness. Because
Right.
when we live in that chaos, it does change how we view ourselves. It does. We see a different person than what people see around us. But we do deserve to be happy and not feel like, oh, our life is just made for chaos and destruction, which is
Right.
where we see so many people are so miserable around the world. We see it on social media all the time of people bullying each other. Has nothing to do with what that person posted most of the time. Most of the
Right.
time. A lot of things that people are fighting over, you're just kind of like, how did that become an argument? And it's because the person on the other side is miserable with their life.
Miserable.
And they're just like, I need someone else to join me. And
Hmm.
that, like, when you realize, like, that's what is at the addiction piece, is like, I'm just wanting a momentary happiness, but they don't recognize what they really want is they want to finally feel happy. They're not going to feel that with an addiction. And that has been something, like, I've had issues with food. I've had issues with, like, wanting to eat candy because it makes me feel good. And then it's like, that's not the best. I
Right.
want more than that.
And then you circle through that blame and that shame cycle of, oh my God, I can't just believe I just ate a sleeve of Oreo cookies. What is wrong with me? Now I'm going to be fat and people are going to think I'm ugly. And see what I meant? Like, that's why I started eating the cookies in the first place. And it's like that vicious
Never
shame
ending
cycle that
cycle
you can't
unless you
get
stop
off.
it.
And it's
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So what would you tell someone in the beginning of their journey, the middle of the journey, and arriving at the end of the not the end, but like towards the healing piece?
in the very beginning, I would say that it doesn't matter where you are right now, somebody else has been there and people out
Mm,
there understand and that you are not alone. So no matter how bad you
mm,
think your story is, somebody else has experienced it. So talk to someone, find a
I love
friend.
that. I love
Don't
that.
try to do it alone because you can't do it. You
Yeah.
can't. Kind of halfway through the journey, I would just encourage people that to understand and to look at everything you do with curiosity and compassion instead of judgment.
Because we get to
Because
that
when you
point.
stop when you stop judging yourself and stop beating yourself up, I mean, I could
Yeah.
go back and think of the millions of things I did that I regret, but I did them when I wasn't me. I did them when I
Yeah.
was at this
Broken.
place of confusion and chaos, and you can't hold yourself accountable for that. I mean, you can hold yourself accountable, but making better choices going forward. You can't spend your life beating yourself
Yeah.
up for the past.
You
It's
can
done.
you can hold yourself accountable. You don't need to punish yourself inevitably forever. Whatever the word
Right.
is. You can't punish yourself forever for the things that you did. At some point you have to say, I I forgive myself. And I
Yes.
can walk in forward and say that was dumb, but I'm not going to do that again.
Right. I mean, forgiveness is one of the steps, the 12 steps when you go through recovery of any kind. And so many people get stuck on it because one, they can't forgive their abusers, and two, they can't forgive themselves. And so
Yeah.
they stop and they never
Yeah.
make any more progress. So that
Mhm.
is like a huge part of it, is
Yeah.
just accepting the fact that that was, I kind of look at myself and go, oh, that was the before the healed me, like that
Yeah.
was
Yeah. Yeah.
BT, the before Tammy, like the real Tammy, and I don't feel guilty about those things because it
Yeah.
will eat you
Makes
up
sense.
alive.
Yeah.
And then there is no end, but when you get closer, just know there's going to be setbacks.
Mm.
Know that God is going to handle you what you can handle at the time. So he's always going to unravel another layer, but you're ready
Mm.
for it. You're
Mhm.
ready for it, and
Mhm.
it's worth the fight. It might be a couple moments, a couple days, a couple weeks, a couple months, even a couple years of being a little uncomfortable, but it's going to take
Mm.
you way past where you were. The
Yeah.
harder it is to get past, the bigger the reward is on the other side.
That's so true. Is there anything else you would like to add before we end? Because I think that that's a beautiful analogy to have for people.
No, just that I think you are so worth it, and we were
Mm.
all born these beautiful divine creatures, and then shit happened. Life happened to us, and we put on a lens of the world, and we see the world in a different way. But know that you are beautiful, you are safe, you are loved, you are worthy, and
Mm.
that's all you need to know.
I
Believe
love
it.
that. I love that. If you guys want to reach out to Tammy, you guys can absolutely do that. Her information is going to be in the description of the podcast. You guys can reach out, ask questions, comment questions, like, follow, subscribe, email, message her, whatever you feel comfortable with. But she is 100% correct. You are worthy of healing and worthy of a good life. And lots of stuff has happened, and I'm sorry. We're sorry for that, and we hope that you can find healing, because it doesn't need to impact you in the way it will be something that hurts you, but it doesn't have to impact every moment of every breath that you have. It can influence you differently to learn how to maneuver it and go through it and work through it in the right ways with the right people. All right, you guys, have a wonderful day.